Howdy, howdy, howdy. Folks, we are back for, believe it or not, episode 4 of the Overflow Podcast. And as you can already tell, I am joined again by Mr. Wayne Sutton. Super excited to have him back. It's funny, just before we hopped on here, I was talking about going solo on this little podcast journey, and it's just good to have another voice in the room. You can be your own worst critic, but brother, it's glad to have you back.
Yeah, man. Well, you did great, but it's also glad to be back. Good to be back.
Well, listen, folks, we are here for the Overflow Podcast, all about living in the presence and the power of God in your everyday life. So if you're joining us for the first time, this is really designed to help you grow deeper in your walk with the Lord, not just on Sundays, but right in the middle of the chaos, the mess, and the beauty of your everyday life. I know both Wayne and I have different paths and different journeys to where we are in our walk with God. And what we're really trying to do is just share a little bit of our insights, and sort of hopefully it'll help you grow deeper in your journey. If you have questions, if there's a topic that you want to dive into, feel free to drop it in the comments. But we're going to sort of jump right into this one, dive into Pastor Jerry's latest message, the tools of the shepherd. So I didn't get a chance to be there Sunday. I know that you were back in, which was great to have you back there. I was actually checking out my guy, Stephen Wilson Jr. in Myrtle Beach, which I have to make a quick plug. He has this really cool story at the beginning. He grew up in the Pentecostal church. So when he is on stage and performing, man, he is all over the place. He talks about, when I was at church, you did not sit down. There were exorcisms going on, people speaking in tongues. We were moving and shaking. And what's really interesting is his father was actually an amateur Gold Glove boxer, and he would train him as a kid. But he talks a little bit about that. He talks about so he's bouncing all over the stage, he's singing and he's doing his thing. I was like, this is awesome. But it's funny because, Pastor Jerry talks a lot about that, of wanting to create energy, and praise and worship comes in all sorts of different sizes and shapes. And I'm not pressing anybody to have to be a crazy person when you worship, but there is something about putting your hands up and sort of a little bit of movement, an emotional movement. I know I'm raise my hand. I am an emotional guy. Guys cry, believe it or not. I'm one of them. So I think it's a little bit of a shameless plug, but I was funny because I was in the concert and I'm just like, man, this is what Pastor Jerry's talking about right now. Like, this is what we're getting into. So if you haven't listened to him, check him out. He's up and coming. It was a great concert in the House of Blues, but that's neither here nor there. Let's dive into the tools of the shepherd. Wayne, why don't you just kick us off a little bit, what your thoughts are on this? And then I'm going to actually read us the verse from John chapter 10.
Yeah, man. Well, the beautiful thing is we hear about the shepherd. He's the good shepherd. And there's so many references to the shepherd. And I think for myself, even decades in the church, grew up in the church. Okay, he's a shepherd. Okay, I'm the sheep. But what does that really mean? And if you think maybe back in biblical days, they understood that. But today, maybe we don't. So today, we'd have to understand it from a different, perspective. I've heard, a minister a number of years ago said, Jesus talked about the windows of, the Bible talks about the windows of heaven opening up and receiving. Today, we would say, well, that was a download.
So true.
Somebody speaks in tongues, it sounds like this, but today it's a encrypted message, and we're going to decrypt it with the Holy Spirit. So it's just like new understanding. But the principles are the same. If you really look at the tools of the shepherd, and Pastor Jerry talked about the staff, and I know next week he's talking about, I think he's going to talk about the voice next week, and there's so many different tools, but it's what the Lord uses to guide us, lead us, save us, correct us, keep us moving along the path. There's multiple tools that a shepherd would use that the Lord also uses symbolically, at least.
Mm-hmm.
So,
sure. No, I mean, it was. There's a little bit of a light moment in this as well, which we'll get into. I think Pastor Jerry and Brian found a great clip to talk about how we all resemble sheep, which was great. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But we did the podcast last week, and Pastor Jerry talked a little bit about the bummer lamb, and I want to get back into the tools of the shepherd as well. But this is a great sort of weaving what we talked about last week into this week is, there are situations where there's a bummer lamb. And in that situation, it's that bummer lamb is left to its own devices. Yet the shepherd takes it in, nurtures it, feeds it, speaks to it, and then lets it go back out on its way. And what's the really cool part about that is when the shepherd comes and calls, the bummer lamb is always the first to come back. And that, I know we talked a little bit about that last week, but that's just the key point of that is the voice. And we talked about, I know Jesus. And I can't tell today, but I got my hair cut yesterday and was talking actually to my barber about, his faith and sort of just like what he's got going on. He's got a little girl. He's showing her the new shows. There's a lot more shows you can watch nowadays that talk about Jesus. But one of the things that we talked about is, you know Jesus, you know God, you know about them, but do you really know their voice? Do you know when they talk to you? And that's the piece, at least for me, that was like the aha moment of there's a lot going on in the world, go through praise and worship and I know about God, but do I know when he talks to me? Because that's the piece where I really feels like there's the true guidance. Like there's the real, okay, I'm getting something, a download, and I'm able to apply that to my practical life. I apply it to my situation that I'm in right now. And I think that's the missing piece for most folks is they don't know the voice. And that's just like that. That's the real, I think, stickler for all of us. It's the piece that we all grasp for. But once you get a hold of it and you understand, you know the voice, then you know the power of the voice, and you can continue to lean into that.
Yeah.
So just wanted to, we talked about, we're in John chapter 10. So I'm going to go chapter 10. It's verse 11. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd gives his life for the sheep. Right. So we just went through Resurrection Week. We know that Jesus sacrificed himself for us. Right. So there's continuity there. We're continuing this theme. But what really is powerful on this is that not only is he giving his life, but there's tools that he provides. Right. He acts as a shepherd, his staff, his voice. Those are things that if you can really understand those tools and how he uses those, then you can start to use those in your own life, right? So like there's a lot there to unpack, but I think if you keep it simple, you can be like, oh, okay, I'm starting to get this a little bit. So I want to talk about how do we recognize God's voice today? And for you and your journey, was there ever a moment that was like, man, now I'm starting to hear God's voice, like I'm starting to get it?
Oh wow, man. And I'll share, but I want to say this too. I've shared this before when people go, wow, I didn't hear God that way. So, and I want people to understand people hear in different areas.
Yes.
But one of the ways, and I've heard, and let's just talk about some of the ways you can hear God's voice. There's the still small voice that, like, is that my thought? Is that somebody else's thought? There's the impressions. I've heard a minister say, look, God's first language is not English. We understand.
That's so true, though.
We feel him. We're led. But then sometimes it's a still small voice. Sometimes it's a dream. Sometimes he speaks through other people. Obviously, he speaks through the Holy Word. So we're to be in the Word. He'll speak through a minister. I grew up in church, and the still small voice was there. But there was one instance. It's going to take about 3 minutes to share, but I really think it's important for people to know.
Please, yeah.
And I've shared this before. There was one instance, and it's like I didn't know what else to do. It was actually two, but one I feel comfortable sharing publicly. But it was just one instance. And so just really quick, I get a call from my, did not know I was going to share this today, but I hope it helps somebody. I got a call from my stepmother, 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, I don't know, early. And she's like, hey, I don't know where your dad's at. We had an argument. He left. I'm getting worried. Okay. My dad, this was years ago. I had a cell phone. Dad didn't have a cell phone. It was just, okay. So I hop in the car and I go, I know 3 places. There's a local truck stop. Everybody just kind of hung out, had a restaurant. I go there. He's not there. Hey, have you seen my dad? Everybody knew everybody in the small town. Nope. So I went to his buddy's house. He wasn't there. And I went one more place. And he wasn't there. And I'm like, well, I don't know. Now I've driven 30, 45 minutes. I'm not as worried. He's a grown man. I'm not worried like my mother-in-law's stepmother, was worried, but she's worried. So I'm driving home, and I'm literally pulling up to this one intersection I always go to and I always take a left. And that still small voice said, go straight. And I'm like, go straight. And I've got a turn signal on. I'm ready to turn. I'm like, no. I hear it again. Go straight. But I'm like, is this me? Is this, I pray, but I'm not like in deep intercession at this time. And I'm like, God, is that you? Because there's nothing straight. This is like a 3-mile road to nothing. Tobacco fields and it's nothing. Go straight. Okay, I'll go straight. Take off straight, right? And I'm probably driving about maybe half a mile, and I'm like, okay, now what? This is crazy. There's nothing down here. And that still small voice said, the road beside the bridge. Now I know it's Wayne. It's not God. Because there's no road beside the bridge. I'm like, oh, okay, let me turn around. So I'm going to pass the bridge, go to the intersection, turn around. When I get to the bridge, I see a reflector. Something I've never noticed. And there's a little path. I'd call it more than, you've got to be kidding me. So I stop, I turn, I look. I don't know where this path goes. I don't see anybody's houses, but you know, I grew up in very rural country area. You just don't drive up on somebody's lane at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
And I just heard that still small voice straight ahead. I'm like, there's nothing straight ahead. There's a river, there's a soybean field, and I'm riding beside this field in this little path. So I go, I'm looking, I'm literally looking like, how can I get out of here if this is a bad situation? And when I go maybe a couple hundred yards, there's trees, and wow, this path goes in between the trees. How weird. And I see another reflector, but this time it's my dad's car. And I pull up, and he uses God's name, but he's not in a positive manner. Like, you know, how did you find me, son? And I'm like, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. I was probably 24, 25. I'd never in my life seen that road, never been down there. I was able to talk. The first time I was able to witness to my father and correct him. He said, well, God's in control. I said, no. God's in control to the point you surrender. He sat there long enough for him to sober up and drive the 1.5 miles home. But I never forgot that. And there was other situations. Now, for me, it was my dad needed that. I could have went home with him. I trusted Dad to get home. My dad needed that. So the still small voice came because there was an immediate need. But the still small voice may come and go, hey, I miss you at church. Hey, this church is for you, or this church. May come in and go, hey, you don't need to eat this food. It's not healthy for you. The still small voice comes in so many areas, and that's just one. But for me, that was a definite, I hear the voice of God, because there's no way Wayne Sutton could have found that or even listened. So for our listeners, think back to times when you're like, oh, wow, that was weird. A lot of times it's not weird, it's God. Which could be weird to you, but if you're not used to it.
That's so beautiful, that piece. And I think that your point that you made up front is really important for folks to take home, is that it does come in all different shapes and sizes. And for me, I think at least in where I'm at in my journey, I don't hear the voice as much as I feel discernment.
Yes.
That feeling that in your gut that, you know, whether it's a good or a wrong, like there's something that discernment feeling I feel. And I know that oftentimes we talk about it at church quite a bit, that's how the Lord can speak to you, is through discernment, a feeling of maybe not necessarily feeling guilty, but like to your point, a feeling of a direction or guidance one way or the other. And honestly, I think that's how we ended up in Carolina Beach, Morgan and I. was through the word and through some direction and through the Lord speaking to us. Because if you were going to, like I said before, if you're going to tell me that I was going to be here doing this podcast as a deacon at Seaside Chapel, even a year ago, I would have said, yeah, absolutely not. 3 years ago, I would have said, you're crazy. Carolina Beach. We were living in Philly at the time. And how did we ended up here? And how people ask us all the time, how'd you get here? How'd you pick your house? And I'll save the story for another time, because I want to keep us rolling. But I think about that a lot. And frankly, my wife picked this house when it was $100,000 too expensive for us. And somehow it went off the market and came back. How? I don't know. Maybe point to him. You know, I talk about that a lot to my friends. You need to go house shop and take Morgan with you. For some reason, she's got something that can speak things into existence. But I really think that's a voice from God, right? Of how we got here. And then to look at all of the things that have transpired, to see that Pastor Jerry married Morgan and I, to see the development in our relationship with the Seaside community and the fellowship that's there, to see the step into the deacon role and to being more involved. Like it can't be anything other than the voice of God. Like that's, you know, you have to look back at that and say, was that me? Was that someone? Like, what's going on here? When all those things start to align, it's hard to turn away and say, no, that's not it. It's not all coincidence.
Yeah. And well, back to your point, discernment is how me and Candace ended up at Seaside. It was not, we'll save the story for another day, as you said, but it was, I feel this. How do you feel? And then really talking to our children and going, what do you think? And then
I love that component. Giving them a voice.
Yeah, but it was the Holy Spirit leading us to a church we'd never been in, you know, nobody we knew there, and finding home and finding, you know, an opportunity to serve there. So that's the good shepherd. He's like, I need you here, or you need to be here, or probably a little bit of both. You know, you need to be here with these people. So let me take the hook of this staff and let me just kind of guide you.
Yeah. And that's what, I mean, we say all of that to say this is that is the good shepherd in action, both in your situation and in mine. And that's the tools of the good shepherd that are being applied to your life. And then it allows you to use those tools as well to continue to go out. And whether it's through, you know, evangelizing or being involved in your fellowship or in your community, those tools are then in your tool belt as well. Once you understand and you can harness, you can use those tools as well. And I think that's also the point we talk about. How do we apply this to our real life? It's not only knowing God, it's knowing his voice. And then once you're there, being able to take those tools and apply them to your own life. So, you know, I do want to take one quick moment that if you haven't seen the video of the shepherd and the sheep falling into the ditch, use that and look it up. It's hilarious. But what I felt that Jerry did such a great job of was that applying he even says, that's me right there. Pull me out of the ditch. All right, I'm ready. I'm jumping, and then right back in. And that is us every day. We can wake up, we can pray as soon as we get up, we get out of bed. Does that mean when you stub your toe, you may not, you know, stay outside of the flesh? Probably not. I mean, that's the life that gets in front of you. That's the chaos. But I think if there's a voice or a ditch that you find yourself continuously falling into, then it's a time of reflection. And that's a time of, are you really listening to God's voice? Because if he's telling you something, he's pulling you out of a situation, yet you continuously find yourself back into that same ditch, then there's maybe a point of, okay, what's going on here? What's God really telling me to do? So that's something that I wanted to share, that if you take a look at your life, is there a ditch that you just, for whatever reason, keep falling into? Maybe it's time for a little bit of a deeper reflection and asking God for his voice, saying, God, I know you've helped me out of this, but what's going on here? How can I take a step in a different direction, the step that you want me to take? So I just challenge you to spend a couple minutes a day. Lord, what are you speaking to me today?
Absolutely. And listen back to discernment. Who's he leading you to? I see so many people that make, as you said, they're in the same ditch over and over. It's almost like a cycle of despair. And sometimes it's, Lord, what do you want me to do? Lord, who do I need to speak to? The Bible says my people perish for lack of knowledge. my people, my sheep, they perish. And why did they perish? The lack of knowledge. And a lot of times that somebody could have a solution for you. The number one thing is we have to let go of ego. We have to let go of pride.
Yep.
We have to go, I need help here. Or, hey, I keep going into this. I keep falling into this ditch. What do you see? Now you got to find people you can trust. You got to find a body of believers you can trust. You got to find a pastor, a counselor, brother or sister in Christ that you can trust and go, are you seeing something I'm not seeing?
Mm-hmm.
Because I need to get out of this ditch. And but say, hey, Lord, lead me. Lord, guide me. You know, I have counseled Eli, counseled hundreds and hundreds of people. And what I always direct people to is, especially if they don't know how to hear the voice of God, or maybe they've been hurt by the church, or they're confused or whatever. I always go back to, Lord, reveal yourself to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Jesus, I was actually working with one client for a number of years there. And in the beginning, they were just like, I'm done. I'm done with life. I'm done with this. I'm done with this. They even said, you know, I'm not suicidal, but I'd be okay if I didn't wake up tomorrow.
Mm.
And I'm done. And I was like, I got you. And there was some hurt and there was confusion. And they were like, I don't hear the voice of God. And that was one of the things they kept saying. I said, well, just ask the Lord every day, Jesus, reveal yourself to me. And I said, forget what you've been taught by man or church or you know, Sunday school lessons. All that's important. But for you, just forget all that and just say, Jesus, reveal yourself to me. And it was a journey. But that journey led them to a deep relationship with them. And they ended up authoring a book, and they ended up doing something. The point was, it was just because, not because of Wayne, it was because they said, Jesus, reveal yourself. And I think we all can go, you're the good shepherd. I'm the sheep. Bah.
Yeah, it's exactly.
That could be a prayer there. Bah.
Bah.
I need some help, you know? Because that's how I think he would hear. I mean, that sounds silly, but I think he would hear there and go, got you.
Yeah.
I got you. Yeah.
Well, let's end on that. And I love the way that you sort of wrapped it up, because that's the point of this podcast, is we're trying to simplify that and not make this confusing, because I know sometimes that's what pushes folks away, is they don't understand everything that's going on. And frankly, I know I don't. And I don't want to come up here and put myself on some form of pedestal, because I know that I'm very, very early in my journey. But it is as simple as, God, reveal yourself to me today. Take 5 minutes and lean in and say, what are you speaking to me today? And just allow yourself to listen and keep an open mind. That's the biggest thing, is don't close yourself off. And as things come up, question it, think about it, review it, ask God again, is this what you're showing me? Is this what I'm hearing? And and find a group. I think there's nothing more important to that. I'm trying to get my brothers into that as well, of, hey, find a men's group, find young adults group, early career group, a women's group, a mother's group. Find someone that you feel comfortable with. You can go in and share some of these struggles, because if you continue to internalize it, you aren't going to allow the growth opportunity. And I think that that's the biggest thing in our journey is, and I found you, and I found David, and I found other folks, and I'm just so grateful for that. Incredibly grateful. And a shout out to Iron Sharpens Iron, like that men's group and what they're doing in this community. We need things like that. And it's not just about Seaside Chapel. Love Seaside Chapel. But Jerry says this all the time. It's about the community. What can we give back to the community? How do we give back to the community in the way that God wants us to? So listen to his voice, ask for his guidance. And if you're out there, share this podcast. Drop some notes into the comments. If you have something you want us to question or to dive into, feel free to do so. We would love your input. Join us at Seaside Chapel. If you're looking for a new place for Bible study, Wednesdays at 7, Sundays at 10. Everybody's welcome. We love you. We appreciate you. Wayne, brother, it's good to have you back.
Absolutely.
And let's keep rocking. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, everybody. Appreciate you. God bless.